You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, home of the 2-hour deep dive interview with gold, platinum, and multi-platinum bands, including Stained, Blue Rodeo, The Arkells, Finger 11, Big Wreck, Moist, Bedouin Soundclash, I Mother Earth, Ill Scarlet, Neverending White Lights, Thornley, and many more. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast as well as share, comment, and like. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He's achieved a level of mastery as the bass player for the Salads, and he's also been the bass player for the multi-platinum and Juno award-winning band I Mother Earth. So welcome to the podcast, Chuck Dailey. Chuck, how are you, and how good does it feel to make your triumphant return to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast? I mean, what an honor. What an honor.
It is, though, Joel, because it's you're very humble, but you're so very good at this. And I had such a good time talking with you last time, and it's been amazing to watch it all unfold since then. So has it really been a year?
So it's been 10 months. So it was December. So
wow.
you were the end of the year, and it was like, wow, we're finishing the year with a bang here. I up until you came on, I mostly had just friends, people that I knew. And then I thought, okay, coming to the end of the year, you set your big goals. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to reach out to Chuck. I'll throw a Hail Mary. I'll see what happens. And yes, sir. And you came on. And you kind of opened the floodgates for what's happened over the last 9 or 10 months, where you said yes, and then suddenly attached to the name of the podcast, there was Chuck Dailey, there was the Salads, there was I Mother Earth, and right away, Rick Jacket from Finger 11 saw that interview.
Rick's one of my favorite people. Yeah.
And you have the background of I Mother Earth and Finger 11 touring together a lot, and everyone knows each other. So he actually said to me, hey man, with the pandemic, I have an opening in my schedule. I would love to do a deep dive. So cool. Back to back. So that was December and January. I had you, and then I had Rick from Finger 11. And then suddenly, with the two multi-platinum band names attached, almost every other band was like, well, if those two bands are doing it, we should probably do it. So from the Finger 11 interview, then the Mudmen said, hey, we'd love to do it. And then
I love those guys.
All these people, and leading all the way where
you've had some cool people on there, some people you're huge fans of. It's been so fun watching that.
Yeah, it's been crazy, man. And I guess the culmination is recently I had the drummer from Stained, and Stained was my favorite band when I was 16 up, all the way through. But
love it.
So crazy. So anyways, that's how we got here. And I wanted to point out all these things have changed, and starting with the background. So when
your background changed, yes.
I had two quotes from motivational speakers. One of them was David Goggins, and you kept
stay hard.
And you kept stay hard. You kept quoting that poster. So I feel bad that it's not there for you anymore because you loved it. But in your honor, what side is it here? I have the I Mother Earth album cover. So these are album covers from all guests that I've had on the podcast. So my favorite albums from those artists. And
that's so cool. I'm looking at the wall there, Joel, and I'm trying. So Arkells, I can tell you why this all works and how small the world is, right?
Yeah, you're a part of almost every interview I've done. You
certainly feels like it. I don't know how I'm connected to the Stained guys. I must be somehow, but I'm not quite sure. But the Arkells, I used to teach. Tim was one of my students, the drummer in the band, a good friend of mine, great musician, great guy. Moist, I played in David Usher's band for a couple of gigs. Oh my God.
Sounds like an organ, like you're playing some music.
Yeah, well, you asked me to turn off notifications, but I do real estate now, and it's almost impossible to keep people quiet. So I was saying I did a bunch of shows with Moist. Thornley, of course, I know those guys, and really good friends with Chuck Keeping, and very good friends with Sekou, who you had on the show. He's such an interesting, amazing guy. That was a real joy to listen to him talk, because he's done so much cool stuff, and he's played with so many of my heroes. And then, of course, Big Wreck, the same people. Ill Scarlet, who you had on, was a band, The Salads, my band, The Salads, which is my childhood band. we took them on their very first tour ever. And
I guess that's kind of the ska rock connection, right?
I suppose so. We both love the same stuff. And it's funny because those guys, when we started playing with them, and they may say differently now, but at the time they said we were inspired by you guys. You're our ska band, all right? So, and they took it further than we ever got, which is so cool to see. And then of course I'm Mother Earth. I'm in the band. And then what's the one underneath with like the marionette?
So that's the Finger 11, the Grayest of
Oh,
Blue
that's the Finger
Skies.
11, of course. Yeah, toured all over the country with those guys. Some of my favorite people, of course.
Blue
Yeah,
Rodeo at the bottom underneath, their big one,
yep,
5
done a
days in
ton of
July.
shows with those guys, working with Will Cox. What a great band. What sweet guys. And Jim Cuddy's in Prince Edward County all the time doing stuff. And then the bottom one, is that Perfect Circle?
So it's Tool. So
Cool.
you're in the universe there with
Yeah. So obviously he produced some, he did some My Mother Earth stuff too, didn't he?
David Bottrell. So yeah, that was
Quicksilver Meat Dream.
Quicksilver Meat Dream. Yes, we talked about
Great
that.
record, and that record needs to get online. It's when we were doing those final, those last shows with both singers, with Brian and Edwin, going back to Quicksilver Meat Dream, because it's all Brian's songs, was so fun. And we learned, I went back and learned all of them, and it's pretty awesome record. And then we only played a handful of them, and I was like, come on, Brian, because I knew the other, I don't know if Brian knew, I know the brothers knew, but those were my last shows. And so for me, I knew that they were going to be my final shows, and there were songs that I wanted to play. And they didn't make the set list, but I learned them and was ready to go. So
yeah, that basically the fans have to go to YouTube to listen to that album, right? I think it's up on YouTube
in
its
most
entirety,
of it's there,
but you can't go on Spotify or Apple to get it. And that album sounds amazing. Like sonically, it's such a thick sounding album.
It's a great sounding record, and there is some of my favorite IME songs are on that record, and it's funny because it's so different than what people were used to with their big hits. I think the story is that they finished the whole record, and the label said, what's the single? We don't have a single on here. And so they went back and they did, what was the big hit on it? It's funny, I don't know.
Is it The Sun? Like Under the Sun? What is it?
Like the Sun or whatever it is. That great video in the parking lot.
With the cars?
Yeah, awesome video, right? And so I remember Jag talking about that and saying they needed a song, so they did that one really fast. They just put that together really fast, which is such an emotionally heavy song that what a great song to play. I'm glad that the label spoke up and they ended up with that tune.
And it was that album where the second single was No Coma. That's that album, No Coma.
I believe so. Yeah, there's a video for that. Yeah.
I had mentioned last time we talked, No Coma is actually my favorite I'm Mother Earth song, period. Like not your typical first pick for most people, but for me,
but that's funny because Ed's always asking to, those guys love those sort of slower songs on all the records. The singers really love singing those. So they definitely always come up in rehearsals, but I know the band is really specific about when they'll play those sort of slower, because their slower songs are really slow. They're more like moody, slow songs. Yeah. They're not really ballads, right? They're like moody jams. So those songs only ever come out when we would play where you can control the light show, right? Yeah. So it wouldn't be in a daytime festival where you need people bouncing around the place. So you might put them to sleep, and they're already smoking enough pot and stuff that you don't want to knock them completely
out. It depends who they're playing with too, right? I mean, if you guys are usually playing with heavier bands, it's like you can't have like, I don't know, Metallica, and then there's this ballad. Well, I guess Metallica has a few
it works really well. And I have something to say about that with the new Standstills record too, because I saw their track list and they left a song off that is my favorite song.
So there's 12 songs. So you were hoping for 13?
Oh yeah, they know it. I've sort of talked to them about it, and they're
how dare they?
Like, Chuck, shut up! Stop talking about it. But it's there was a very unique tune on that. I have no idea what they're doing with it, but it's very different than the rest of the record. And I think that's why they chose to keep it off, because they wanted some consistency and to be the roller coaster that all had the same sort of mood, right? But when I was playing with them, I kept being, you have to do this, and I would show them old Van Halen records and things like that, where there's really oddball tracks on the record, right? Where it'll be all these heavy, swinging, heavy metal tunes, and then they'll have like a bluegrass song on the record with somebody playing clarinet, right? And it's like, you can do this, right? Or Guns N' Roses, when they put out a full acoustic record that was full of like little country songs, and I think the big hit was Patience off of that record, right? But
And wasn't David Lee Roth doing like older kind of crooner numbers as well? Like
oh yeah,
he would
yeah.
do like covers on his solo albums that were
Oh
big,
yeah,
like
he
a
did lots of cool
Gigolo and
stuff. Yeah. Well, that's I think what makes that band so special is that they swing so hard. But then David Lee Roth brings in this like dancey disco element that you don't normally get in rock bands, right? And it keeps it groovy and it keeps people dancing and it never gets old, right? Like, yeah.
Mm.
But anyways,
Yeah, no, on
there's 12 songs on that new Standstill. I personally wish there was 13. So there is a track floating out there in the universe.
well, a
And
lot of
fans
times
are gonna
with
have to bug them for it. So
a lot of times with streaming, you see bands are putting out the album, and then a few months later, there's also the deluxe edition that has like one to three
yeah, so
more
maybe that's
songs.
what's going on. I'm not really privy to their business anymore since I got off tour, but it's man, it's a cool song, and I hope it sees the light of day one day. But regardless, without it, that record is out of control, amazing. It's so exciting that's coming out in November. So
We'll dive into that. I'm excited because it's been done for a long time, and
right, most of it. Yeah.
gotten singles, but there's just kind of we've all been waiting on a release date, and the date just popped up like in the last 2 or 3 days. So I'm
Yeah.
excited. We'll dive into that. Okay, so it's been 10 months. There's been 70 plus interviews, and as of today, your episode is still the sixth most played, period. So number six out of like 75
Oh, number 6.
Go number 6. Yeah. It's like a participation medal. But what I'm saying is with Big Wreck and Stained and Trouble
Oh yeah, with
Charger,
these big people. I'm the
70
bass player,
big
right?
bands, 70 big bands, and yours was all the way back, so it's harder to find going through. That's why we got this new one that's going to be at the top.
Oh yeah, is that right?
So anyways, I just wanted to say that I think it's pretty impressive that your interview that was all the way at the start of all this through 10 months of amazing guests is still number 6, still top 10. So I wanted you to feel that before we continue.
Feel that love. Well, thank you, Joel. It was, I think it was just a really, you're a very genuine interviewer and you ask honest questions and you're easy to talk to. So I think it comes across and people watch it, right? So
yeah, it's funny. They say thank you. They say, you should find kind of what you're passionate about and see if you can do that for a living. So for me, it's like, okay, the guy talks too much and he has all this music knowledge, nerdy stuff that no one cares about. So if I can put those together and some people enjoy it, then that's pretty cool. So I wanted to kick off this episode powerfully. So I reached out to a mutual friend and I got some kind words here from Dan Preston. So,
all right,
guitarist from Clark Nova, one of the top live audio guys, tour managers in the industry. Obviously, history with I Mother Earth, Finger 11, 3 Days Grace. This guy's amazing. So this is what he says. He says, Chuck was the first person I had ever met that had the same feelings about music that I felt. He's extremely passionate and welded to the craft. Good choice of words.
Yeah.
A fun and creative musician with the personality to match. Also, one of the most encouraging friends and musicians out there. There's no competition. He just wants everybody to be great and to do great things. We've had many great times over the years, sharing stages, playing and touring together. Much respect to Chuck, lifelong friend and colleague that I wish nothing but the best for. So Dan Preston.
Well, that really hits me in the heart because I love Dan, and that's funny. You were reading that, and my eyes started to well up. And it's more just like when people notice, right, what you're doing, because it's never self-serving, and it's always like it's funny. I do real estate now full time, and I keep getting questions from people when I get listings from other agents. Why did you ask Aaron to do this listing with you, or why did you ask Jason, or why didn't you do this alone? And I always say, well, I was in bands for 30 years. I'm a band guy. I love working with people and succeeding together. And there's so much to learn from every single person I work with. And the more people I can that agree to do that with me, I can get little bits of what they do. They can take from me. Maybe I'll do exactly what they're doing. But it's all about collectively succeeding. So it's really nice that Dan sees that, because I could tell you the interesting thing was during the pandemic, I complained a lot about not being able to play shows. I complained a lot about not having my thing where I need to be on stage and I need to sweat and I need to feel this thing in order to be happy. But my first show back, my first two shows back, what I found making me really happy and was really memorable weren't the shows themselves. It wasn't the performance. It was seeing everybody back at work and seeing everybody do what they're so good at. And my favorite moment of that, I posted it on Instagram, but nobody really knows what it means because I was just walking on the stage and Our Lady Peace were sound checking. And then I saw my dear friend Zeke Myers, who manages a number of the bands you've talked about, Finger 11 and I Mother Earth, and he also runs shows at the Phoenix, and it's just a good friend of mine for years and years and years. And the pandemic was really hard on people like that, people that needed live audiences and were experts at garnering those live audiences. So to see him back at it, kicking butt, just doing what he does, it made my heart jump out of my body. And that's where I was like, oh, this is what makes me happy about this. It's everybody I love back doing it, right? And it was a funny thing that through the pandemic, it was all about myself. And then it turned out when I got there, it's like, no, you know what? This has nothing to do with me. It has to do with all of this, right? So anyways, that's what I took out what Dan just said, because it's the truth. Ed is a really interesting guy in I Mother Earth, Edwin. Because the perception people have about it, and I see it in the crowd too. I see women staring at Ed, and people really are taken by him, and because he's such an amazing singer, but also this amazing looking person. Like, he looks amazing, he sounds amazing, he commands attention. But the amazing thing is how humble and real he is. And he's like, I don't know if he would hate me saying this, but backstage, he's the guy changing his shirt a lot and going, is this okay? Does this look all right? Like, am I going to be all right? And I love, my favorite shows are when he feels confident about that, right? And on stage, if he's sort of sometimes he's at a loss for words. He's so busy singing and wrapped up in what's going on. He might be at a loss for words. He will say that, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to say tonight. And so I found myself over the last year or so playing with Ed before the pandemic, and then the last couple shows I did with him during the shows, if I sensed that with him, I'd walk over and whisper in his ear. I'd whisper in his ear, you guys sound great, or you guys look great. And he would say something to that effect shortly after, and to watch the audience explode. And then he'd look over at me and smile, and he does the same to me. He's the one guy in the band that, if simple things, if I get a haircut, the first thing he'll say, hey, you got a haircut, that looks great, right? Like, it's all about lifting each other up, right? And yeah, it's nice to have someone notice that I do that, because it's a silent thing that I do. And it's also a self-realization thing that only just happened recently that I didn't know about myself, right? So
that was a big aha moment for you during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So you were back on here on episode 32 of the podcast. So we did a full deep dive through your entire life, your entire
career. I don't know if that was your plan, was it? And that's just what happened, isn't it?
I guess so. I don't know what I'm doing even today, but I went back and listened to it so that it's fresh. So I'm not asking any of the same. So this is a brand new interview, but all that to say is, during the other interview, I shared with you the story of waiting in line at a Future Shop for your autograph. It was an event. Okay. I remember it was an event that also had the
Edwin was there.
Edwin, Sean Desmond, Fifi Dobson.
Oh
I
man, that
think
was
I
the
think Not
glory
by
days.
Choice was there as well. So
Probably.
just touching on your story with Edwin, where you're like, even though he's this rock star, that he, he's very humble as well.
I
So
mean,
that's
he like yeah, he's a very loving person, right? Like,
yeah.
yeah.
So all the interactions I've had with him over the years, he's super friendly, super kind. And that one event at Future Shop, so I was able to get in there early. They weren't letting in fans yet.
Yeah.
Somehow my mom and I just walked in, and Edwin was like over in the corner waiting for the autograph session to start, and I just walked over to him and I said, "Hey man, like I'm a big fan, can I get an autograph?" And this is at the start of his solo career, and he says, absolutely, like absolutely, I'll give you an autograph, but to be honest, I don't know if anyone is even going to come to get an autograph for me. So I don't know if I'm going to sit there and nobody shows up for an autograph. So
Yeah, no, that's totally
so
him.
he
That's
goes, is
him.
it
Yeah.
okay? I will give you the autograph, but is it okay if you wait 5 minutes until they open the doors, because you might be the only person that's going to come over and ask for an, like, that's what I remember, how humble he is. And obviously the album
Yeah,
goes
well, that's
platinum, and
it's
there's
interesting, right? Because he's like
throngs of
stunning
people.
in videos, and it's almost like he doesn't realize it, right? Like,
Yeah. But sometimes that's a good quality to have, right? Because if you
yeah.
go to the other extreme where it's like they know how incredible they are, it's like the ego and all that
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah. I don't think he would be as good if he had that, because the thing that makes him so great is how hard he works at it too. Um, he rehearses non-stop leading up to shows in his hotel rooms. He'll drive around in his car and sing. And he's the only singer I've ever played with that sits with a tuner backstage and sings into his tuner to make sure all of his pitches are like bang on in the center. And he's doing
wow.
this right before he goes on stage. And yeah, he works really hard at it because he's always got that on his mind, right? Like,
That's amazing.
yeah.
That's amazing. So, in the other interview, we went through from your earliest musical memories on. However, I noticed, because it's been 10 months since then, it's like the podcasts evolved, my questions have evolved. So there's actually a lot of stuff I still want to know about you and growing
Oh,
up,
okay.
leading up to your time with the Salads. So I want to take it back to the beginning again. And I want to start by asking, before, when you were young, before you wanted to become a professional musician, was there anything else that you wanted to be? A lot of times we get guests that say firefighter, or I wanted to, drive a dump truck or something stupid. Was there anything that you wanted to be before being a musician?
Yeah, I was obsessed with Indiana Jones. I wanted to be Indiana Jones. Yeah, I
That's
wanted
a
to.
tough career. How does someone become Indiana Jones?
Yeah, well, I think they made his career look a lot more exciting than it actually is, where I think most of the time you work in a museum, filing things,
Yeah.
and you're not going around having romances on the other side of the planet. And
A treasure hunter at times.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, an archaeologist, right? And so yeah, that was my dream growing up. I thought I would love to do that. And then when I started playing in bands, which was in grade 7, which was the Salads, it was when I first started playing in bands. I started to realize that I could maybe use music to do what I wanted to do as Indiana Jones, which was basically travel around the world, explore, discover new things, maybe have a romance, all of those sort of things. So
you found a way to still monetize that early dream,
yeah,
Indiana
yeah.
Jones.
And I just bought myself a leather jacket that looks just like his too. So that dream hasn't died, Joel.
Well, I want to see, a picture of you in that leather jacket on your social media within the next week. I want proof
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. I'm
of you
rocking it.
looking badass. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If the weather calls for it, I'll put it on.
If I met you at 12 years old, who would I be meeting?
Uh, the same guy you've met now?
At
Except,
12, you weren't like, I don't know, a troublemaker. You weren't into like, I don't know, figurines or skateboards. Like, what is 12-year-old Chuck
well, the 12-year-old me was hanging out with Grant and Dave in the Salads.
that
And
early? Wow.
and we yeah, sure, we had those great big fat skateboards because that was in the 80s still. That was the late 80s, right? Like it would have been 1986 or 87, something like that. And so we had those great big fat skateboards that had like kick plates and things on them, and we would
Did it
ride
have the
them.
brake underneath the back? Like
No,
there's
oh
like a
yeah, yeah, yeah,
brake
the
that you
little
can,
rubber piece on the
yeah,
back.
but
Yeah.
it makes it so heavy that you can't like do kick flips or anything.
Oh
But
yeah, and they
that
had
wasn't how
rails on them.
skateboarding was back then. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so we rode them. We would sit on them and ride down hills. And Grant, our drummer, see, I didn't get in a lot of trouble, but I had a lot of friends that were troublemakers, I guess. But they're sweet guys. And Grant and the Salads was going to Myrtle Beach all the time with his family. That was their vacation spot, and he'd always come back with firecrackers, fireworks, all the stuff that we're not supposed to have here. He'd smuggle back in his parents' car. He got busted selling them in public school and got in trouble and got kicked out. But we used to shoot those off all the time, all over the place. And I'm actually very, very glad that there weren't video cameras like there are now. You know, it's because 12-year-old me, I was getting into a little bit of trouble doing dumb stuff with firework, like bottle rockets, shooting them at each other, or like hiding behind mounds of dirt and shooting them at neighbors' houses and things like that. Um, but as I got to be like 15, 16, and up to probably like 19, I think we were living real life like Nitro Circus or Jackass, or we were doing all of that stuff. So when those movies came out, it was like, oh, that's us, except we just didn't have cameras, like jumping out of moving vehicles and doing ridiculous, dangerous things, right? Yeah.
So a few years later, we talked about when you were 12. So now you're 16 years old. If we were friends when you were 16 and you invited me over to listen to some music, what albums would you be spinning for me?
Probably a lot of the same records I'm still listening to now. At that age, I was listening to a lot of Van Halen and a lot of Bobby McFerrin at that age. I was a massive fan of both things. And Bobby McFerrin, I fell in love with a record called Circle Songs, but he also made a record with Yo-Yo Ma, cello player, that is just stunningly beautiful and mind-blowing. I don't know if I've seen another musician quite like Bobby McFerrin until Jacob Collier just came around, and he's a similar kind of amazing magical force of music that is hard to understand, really. Like, where does that all come from, right? And both guys, it came from family. And it's the same with the Van Halen guys. It's all family, right? So yeah, when you met me, I would have been listening to Van Halen records, but also, what did you say, 16?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was a prime candidate at like 14 up to be marketed to by glam rock bands, right? Like hair metal bands. Because back then, when I was a teenager, they marketed those bands like Poison and Tesla and Warrant, and Winger was one of my bands I loved, and I still love them. They marketed to us like they did boy bands, like when we got older, right? Like the way you market the Backstreet Boys to young girls and stuff. They were marketing Van Halen that way, and it was like, so we would have bubble stickers and posters of Roth everywhere on our walls.
I remember my sister having pillowcases for like New Kids on the Block and those.
Yeah. So it was all stuff like that, except it was these like people that were kind of liabilities that had like drug issues, or like were wild people, or they may have been had their values sort of in the wrong place, but they were being marketed to children, right? And so when I was like 15, 16, as a prime candidate, I loved all of that. And it's never gone away. So yeah, with Grant, we had little tiny mullets, right? With a little bit of hair poking out here, because it's all
just
mom and
killing it.
Bro,
on your skateboards. Yeah, I like it.
On our skateboards and our jean jackets with patches on them and stuff. And we would go to all the shows together. So Grant and I saw White Lion together, and we saw Cinderella together. We saw Def Leppard a couple times together. Yes, of course. And yeah, just that whole genre. and I still absolutely adore it. It's like I still listen to it every day, right? So
Those
anyhow, we would have been listening to a lot of hair metal.
it's funny, the marketing of those like dangerous bands to kids and teens, it seems like it's the equivalent of the unhealthy foods now, like, McDonald's marketing the kids or something. It seems like not quite right.
Well, it's yeah, I have a lot of theories about so my kids are 19 and 16 now, and they're pretty straight edge kids. Like they're no drinking, no drugs, anything like that. And so I had dinner with Mark Emery once. I don't know if you know who Mark Emery is, but he's the Prince of Pot. He's the guy that got extradited from Canada and was put into solitary confinement in the US for selling seeds before they were legal. If you look up Mark, he's very famous. He is the reason pot is legal in Canada. But anyways, I had dinner with him once, and he said to me, if you ever want your kids to not do something, just do it a lot, because his kids hate pot. And so my point is that I think all of those rock bands of excess back in the day, and then even growing up in the 90s, all those bands were kind of liabilities, right? Like Kurt Cobain was a liability for the record company. They lost their act, right? Like there are so many artists like that. And now what we see is record labels signing lots of children, right? So I think the liabilities and stuff and the way that we all behaved and the people we worship, young people now aren't interested, right? Like they're just like, nope, our parents did that. I don't want to do that. So anyhow, 16-year-olds now are very different than when I was 16.
Yeah, I think the thought process for the labels when they sign someone like Justin Bieber at, I don't know, 14 years old, they think, okay, well, there's this window where people are cool until they're, I don't know, 30. So if they sign an artist that's 28 versus Bieber at 14, it's like they have an extra decade of releasing 5 extra albums and
Yeah, it's
generating
possible.
millions.
My theory is that it was imagine these record labels holding a meeting back in the day with like a band like Jane's Addiction,
Ugh, yeah,
right? They're all
good
junkies.
point.
They'll show up to the meeting, or maybe two guys don't show up, right? And there are liabilities. It's this business trying to make money. That's my theory, anyways. That's what I think
So
happened.
you're thinking also that if they're younger, that it's like the
It's
people
easier to
working
control.
at the people working at the label are almost like adult figures that are molding and mentoring those younger ones.
You
So
can
they're
control it. Yeah,
yeah.
you can control it. Whereas otherwise you couldn't control it. And that's where I have this long stretched out thing where now my theory about young people today is that we were all obsessed with all these artists that were liabilities. And they don't want any part of that, right? Like, because that's what dad did, right? That's what dads do.
Do
So,
you ever look at your kids that are both awesome, like they're upstanding citizens? Do you ever look at them and you're like, how did I create those two?
oh yeah, I don't know how. It's funny. All of my musician friends have great kids like I do. You
That's
know,
true. Actually, when I look at your circle, all you guys are posting about your kids and how proud you are. Like it's not like a rock and roll type thing. Like you picture, like, is Axl Rose going to be, posting, as father of the year? And
oh, it's all changed now, right? Because rock
yeah,
stars are old now. Rock guys are the old guys now, right? Because even the Foo Fighters show the other night, they're just sitting with their families, and it's so nice to see it. Because it's for me, it's familiar. That's what I'm used to seeing on the road, is people with their families, right? So,
we have a fan question sent in here, and
oh,
you
cool.
you might have answered it a little bit, but there's a second part. So this was sent in on Facebook from Paul Murphy, uh, and he is from Wabashine, Ontario.
You
So
sure you
if you
got
know
that
where
right?
that is, I'm for sure got it right. Wabashine, Ontario. So I don't know where that is, but Paul is from there. He asks, has your taste in music changed over the years? And are there artists you listen to now that you definitely would not have listened to when you were younger?
I do have one that I know for certain. I listen to a lot of Rod Stewart. I freaking love Rod Stewart. He's so amazing. And when I was growing up, that was mom music. That was like my friend's mom's
Yeah.
records. They loved Rod. And now I
If
can't
you
get enough
think
of
I'm
it.
sexy.
Yeah, I love like Faces, the band Faces and Ooh La La. There's some of his record covers are some of my favorite album covers of all time. There's one where it's a glass of bourbon and it's just you can see his face through the bourbon smiling. And they shaped the whole record like a glass of bourbon, and you pull the record out of the top of the glass. And it's just when I look at Rod, I see some of my best friends, right? I'm like, oh my God, this is like hanging out with Jerry and Jerry Finn, or and just the way the music feels just really gets me. So yeah, become a huge Rod Stewart fan where I wasn't before. But beyond that, I think it's all kind of stuck out. I came from a family of musicians, and my older brother was a jazz musician. My dad was a jazz guitar player. My mom was a violin player. So there was always a ton of music in the house. And growing up, we'd be listening to, as a family, listening to anything from John Coltrane to Van Halen together. Or my mom loved Jimi Hendrix, right? But it's like, yeah. So none of that has changed a lot.
Yeah.
But I've become a huge fan of Rod. I used to be anti-Rod.
Rod Stewart, people now, they think of him as singing, the Great American Songbook, more of the, crooner type stuff.
Yeah,
But
he does that.
way
Yeah.
back in the day, wasn't he like singing legit rock? Like he was the
Oh
singer of
yeah,
a rock band?
it was
Like they were
like the
badass.
Stones, right?
Okay,
Yeah, like
yeah.
Maggie May is Ron Wood playing bass
Oh
on
wow.
that track. And that's I don't know, go back and listen to that track and listen to the bass. It's one of the coolest bass songs ever recorded. And it's the guitar player in the Rolling Stones. But yeah, yeah, for sure. His whole genre sort of fit into that Rolling Stones world, right? It was very much that even the image and the outfits and it was kind of glam, right? Like,
Hmm. Yeah. So something that I didn't know, and our fans probably don't know, is you grew up on a small horse farm, and this is
yep,
in King, Ontario. So this is in
King
the
Township. Yeah.
the Toronto general area. How much do you think that influenced you as a musician and as a person on a small horse farm? And that's not the typical,
It was nice to have a place to take my amps out onto the back porch and play as loud as I wanted. So
did
that
the
I
animals
remember.
react at all?
And our house was sort of situated in a forest, and the paddocks were out of sight. So I don't know. I never really played for animals. Um, but it definitely gave me freedom to play. And all of the guys in the salads, so Dave Z lived in the Holland Marsh on an onion and carrot farm. And so yeah, I don't I think if I didn't go to Kettleby Public School, none of this would have ever happened for me. My dad had me playing guitar, but it wasn't something I ever pictured myself doing. It was just extracurricular he was forcing me to do. And so yeah, I don't think if I didn't grow if I family didn't move there, I don't think I would have connected with those guys who were the greatest influences in my whole musical life, for sure. I know for certain it's because of those guys that I can play like I do now. We were just little boys, right? And it's really fun when you're a kid to show each other how good you are at something. Look what I can do. And you're always trying to beat the other guy, right? I think that's why young kids in extreme sports get so good at it too, right? You always have friends to push you. And those guys and myself pushed each other a lot. And that was a result of living in that spot. And so I started a band with a bunch of farmers, and we were called the Salads.
That's awesome. With a bunch of farmers. Oh, we almost had a special guest there.
Yeah, my wife was poking her
We
head
saw a
in.
little bit of hair, just a little hair on the side
Come
there.
show me purple hair.
I just wanted to say hi.
My silver hair is
Hello.
Simon.
Hi.
There we go. We got Chuck's wife. This is Mel.
Hi, everybody. I'm going.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, look at. Oh God, you got a couple relationship goals right there, right?
Sure. Yeah, she
Yeah.
was in the music business when I met her too. She worked at a record label. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I was gonna ask before the salad started to find a bunch of success, did you have any like regular person jobs? I like, my audience likes to know that the musicians that they love weren't just like born rock stars. They want that human element, like, oh man, they like worked as a dishwasher, they did whatever. Did you have any of those jobs?
Well, it's funny that those same guys, Dave, Grant, and myself, we all worked at a store in Newmarket called The Arts, and we were all just music teachers, right? And our students were, like I said, that's where I started teaching Tim from the Arkells because he was a Newmarket kid, and I taught the guys in the Flatliners, and I taught who else were students of mine became big rocks. There was a bunch of them. The Serial Joe kids were all students of ours.
Nice.
And so yeah, I don't know if that's disappointing, but I played guitar. And
That's
but I did
cheating.
have a couple-
That's you never had a legit job, I guess.
I
you could
did.
say.
I had a couple
Yeah.
crappy jobs. I did some telemarketing. It didn't last for me. I had a really weird job as a chimney inspector. As a teenager, I knew nothing about chimneys. But
Every single place you went, you're like, looks great.
yeah, right. But they did give us a form to fill out. The job was basically standing out on the road, walking through subdivisions and looking at people's houses and marking off what's wrong with their chimneys, knocking on their door and telling them. And then often get invited in to inspect their chimney. But I was just selling chimney cleaning services, right? So yeah, that was a weird job.
So you have had some regular
I worked with a
jobs.
bunch of music friends at that job though too. It was like a bunch of music friends from high school, and I think that's how I ended up there, right? And we would actually, that job was funny because the office next door was a rehearsal space of musicians, and so after work we'd just go in there and play and shred and make a bunch of noise, and yeah.
So our listeners probably know you as a bass player, but you actually started on guitar, if I remember correctly. Who would you say were your top influences as a guitarist and as a bass player? So I'm sure, you know, Eddie Van Halen, but any other guitarists or bassists that really inspired you when you were playing those instruments when you were young?
Oh yeah, well, yeah, it's easy to I find it really funny right now because the Grammys did it. So many people are doing it, but people my age, guys my age, musicians my age, the Mozart of our generation is Eddie Van Halen. And the Grammys didn't give him the love and respect he deserved. He changed everything. He changed everything for all of us. And when he passed away, it was very evident that everybody experienced the same thing I did. And he was the most inspiring person, and it still is. And it's funny. It's like I'm almost refusing to talk about anybody but him. But it's what I realized that he had done. I had a military family too. My dad went to the military, and so he had very creative ways of punishing us. He went to boot camp twice. And all sorts of my friends' dads were like that. I think dads are getting better as generations move on and stuff. But what I noticed when he passed away was there were an endless number of people, including Taylor Hawkins, including Paul Gill. There are just so many musicians out there that all said the same thing, that Eddie taught them how to find joy.
Wow.
So we were all guys that were growing up with these sort of military families coming from like 60s and 50s dads, and we all wanted to have long hair and we wanted to play music, and it was not received well, right? And by all the time, my whole family would tell me I was crazy. Don't do this, right? And I had a lot of family in the South, and I realized when he passed away that there were millions of us that all went through that, and we all looked to Eddie, and we saw the way the music made him feel, and how happy it made him, and that just being that great at something takes you to a whole nother world, right? And that's what he did for me, and that's what he taught me how to do, and he taught me how to find joy. And I find that the people that can play the hardest often are the people that struggled the most in their teenage years and their youth as well, that had the hardest time. And it was because it became an escape, right? It was a place to go. And it's a funny thing I've come to realize now as well, which is part of that thing I was talking about early on when the shows came back after the pandemic. I thought it was all about me and I thought I needed that escape. But came to realize, oh, I don't need this escape anymore. I'm really happy. All right. Like I have an awesome wife. I have awesome kids. I live in an awesome house. Like I'm doing great. And all of those past relationships that were hard are pretty repaired. You know, we've come to terms with everything. And so it's like music doesn't do the same thing for me that it used to. And it's realizing that Eddie showed us where to find that. And so, yeah, he was a massive mentor. Now of course, it's going to be guys like Jeff Beck. I'm a big fan of Bill Frisell, who's a guitar player. He plays with Nora Jones and has his own records and stuff like that. I find, what's his name? That I mentioned him earlier. Oh my gosh, I can't remember his name. Jacob Collier. I find him very, very inspiring. His first record came out and he played at the Opera House for $20 and I couldn't convince anybody to go. And I went to the show. It wasn't even sold out. It sold out the day that it happened. I just stood in that crowd and cried for 2 hours because it was like music, just to see someone that consumed by it was beautiful. So yeah, I don't know. There's a new inspiration. Guy like that. And you know what? I've been really inspired by Neil Sanderson, the drummer in 3 Days Grace. Working with him has really inspired me. And Jill Zimmerman, who is a producer on the Stand Stills record too. I've learned a lot from them in the last couple of years. And I'm inspired by the way that they do music. Because all of my guys, the Jeff Becks and the Eddie Van Halens and all these people are monster players, right? And Neil is a monster player, but he's more got this musical brain that I haven't experienced before, where when I go to shows with him or work on music with him, he is so like wrapped up in it and it just takes over his everything that it's just so fun to be witness to it and watch that happen. I think that's what we watched happen with Taylor Hawkins' kid the other day, just get completely consumed by it, right? And you can feel it, right? And that's what Neil does for me too. And same with Jill. It's like, oh my gosh, these people don't see music the same way I do, but I think I like the way that they see it better. And so I have a lot to learn still, right? So
you mentioned that your dad sometimes there'd be resistance when it comes to you wanting to pursue music as a career. You know, for a lot of young musicians, their family, their friends, there's this resistance where they say, you know, get that good education, get that job, play it safe. A career in the music industry, that's a 1 in a million. That's a pipe dream. How did you deal with that resistance and still push through to go on to do great things in music?
Well, my friends and anybody I know that got to levels like I did or went further, because I only got to so far, so many people go way higher, just refused to do anything else. That's basically it. Like they just refused. This is all I'm gonna do. And some people had very supportive people around them and others didn't, but they all still, that's what they did, is they refused to do anything else. And that's kind of what you have to do because it's not easy. but it's also I believe now doing it that anybody can get there. And that's what I taught a lot of students too. And then I watched it happen over and over and over again. And so it's anybody can do it. Anybody can get there. You just have to refuse to do anything else. And it's very easy to say goodbye when a job comes along that pays you a ton of money too, or something, right? And that can change people's lives. I find a lot of people have kids or they meet. I'm working with a realtor right now that told me that he stopped playing when he met his wife, right? And it's just a difference between me and him. I met my wife and I said, yeah, this is what I do. Right? This is all I'm going to do. And she came to realize I would be fine living in a van down by the river as long as I got to play my guitar all day, every day. Yeah, And that's how I got there. So I don't just refuse to do anything else, and you will get there. You just have to keep your brain in that. I know you know that it's self-actualization and just and but when you do self-actualization is which is just, you know, a lot of people say it out loud. I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna tour
Speak it
stadiums,
into
or
existence.
yeah, speak it into, but when you speak it, you have to believe it 1,000%. Like you can't just say it. It can't just be something you say and there's a little, even with that, and then there's a little shimmer of doubt behind it. That doubt will keep it from happening. You have to actually believe it 1,000%. And I do it now with real estate. I'm doing it. I have this mentor, Jennifer Jones in Georgina, who's a great realtor, and she's told me she does this. So I do it now. And I'm driving around. I look at these amazing big houses. I'm saying, I'm going to sell that house. I'm going to sell that house. And I believe it. Like it's going to happen. Right. So I'm just excited for it to happen. So at music, it's the same thing. Right. So.
Yeah, all the personal growth stuff. They say, you know, not only setting the goals and visualizing and speaking them into existence, but one of the biggest things, like you said, you have to actually believe it.
Oh, you have to.
Is you have to mix emotion with it. So you have to not only visualize selling the home, but you have to mix emotion with it, which is what makes it real. That how will it feel to have sold that home? How will it feel to have helped the family find their dream home? And it's the mix of the excitement, the visualization, but also the feeling. And it's like when you've already felt it, it's like your brain doesn't know the difference whether you just imagined it or whether you actually completed it. You felt that same way
inside. Yeah, I find myself going yes before anything happens all the time, right?
People are just looking at you in the corner going yes, and they're like, what is going on?
Because I know
he's always winning,
happen, right? I just know it's going to happen. When you feel that way, you're like, oh yeah, that's going to happen, and you're like, yeah, I'm there, right? You know, you're already there. And that's the believing, all right? And it's not even believing because you can't force yourself to do it. You'll know it when you feel it, right? Like,
yeah. I remember from the first interview that you're like a master manifester, where it's like all these big goals you had, you just asked for it and it came to be. You never owned a base before, and then you guys speak that into existence, and there's a sponsorship with a base. You wanted a certain producer like Dan Broadbeck to work with you, and you just visualized and you asked and it happened. And
it was about asking too, about it was picking up the phone and just doing it. I find myself, you know, I'm so thankful for how difficult the music business is that way, and how people's egos are so big sometimes that it is really scary to just pick up the phone and call people or approach someone. Or but I find myself giggling all the time in real estate going, oh, just do it, right? Like you've done this a bazillion times. And I'm not necessarily calling people I fear. It's just the process is new, right? So
yeah, the other two things that you manifested that I remember is also, you know, as you play a lot, it's like sometimes you get paid well, sometimes you don't. Oh, this is a good opportunity and it's good to get the name out. And I remember it's like, no, we need to get paid more. And you would ask for like the most ridiculous amount you could think of, and they would drop it by like 2,000, but it's still like $4,000 more than you've ever gotten paid.
Yeah,
so I
remember that's great advice for band people, especially because all the time you're asked to play for free, right?
Yeah.
You'll get what you ask for. You really will. If you don't ask, it's not going to happen. And people are so scared they're not going to have the gig.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Real estate is exactly the same way. You have to you just have to ask. And it's really about friendships and just being kind, and it'll happen. And being really good at what you do. That's most important, right? So that you're confident when you do ask that, and knowing that you're the best choice. Right. So if they're like, I'm going to get a different band. Okay. I'll talk to you later and watch what happens. Right. Like you have to be brave enough to do that. Right. You have to be brave enough to walk away from those things you really want sometimes, because the way that it's coming at you isn't the way you actually want it. It doesn't feel right. It needs to feel right. So.
Yeah, I remember I was in sales for years, and I remember those that succeeded in sales the way they looked at themselves and they looked at the service or product they were offering was that you were blessing the person that you're reaching out to. Like, you are so lucky.
Oh, they're
Like,
lucky to have me.
today
Yeah.
is your lucky day that
Yep.
out of everyone in the world, I reached out to you. And I know that you will not get better service. And for me, whatever it is that I'm offering will make your life better. Those are the people that succeed in sales. When I would train,
It's knowing that you have value, right? And
yeah,
that you can offer people value,
yeah, when
right?
I would train other people, and they would reach out, it was like the vibe was like, I'm sorry to bother you, those kind of things. And it's like dating. Like, if you just want a girl so bad, you push her away. It's when you have that confidence anyways, yeah,
Yeah, thanks for
that's
taking my call, right? Instead of sorry to bother you. Yeah.
yeah. And to wrap up all your manifestations, the last one was, I remember we were both at the same I Mother Earth show, where I think it was like a reunion show or something.
Yep, 2012. Yep.
And you spoke it into existence. You said, if ever they need a bass player, they better give me a call, or I'm going to
Oh
be
yeah, they
pissed
better
off.
call me, or
And
I'm
like
going to be pissed. Is
and
what
a
I
week
said.
later, I think you got a phone call.
Oh yeah, Chris called me. Yeah.
So I had to put all of those manifestations out into the ether so people know.
It's funny because that one was almost comical, but I really meant it, when I said it. And so it was really nice when it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's now officially dive into the salads. And I was able to get 2 salad members to help me kick off this section. So the last interview, I had Darren Pfeiffer,
Awesome.
who he provided a quote. So I didn't want to get the same guys. I had Dan Broadbeck, who worked on the albums. Didn't want the same guys. So I got two members of the salads here. And it looks like people like you so much that they won't just give me like one line. They give me like novels. So hang tight.
Maybe I put pressure on them. I don't know.
Yeah. Hang tight. Grab some tissues. I'm going to read both of these quotes together. So the first one is from Grant Taylor. This is the drummer for the Salads, and he's harder to extract quotes from. I haven't been able to get a quote for any other episode, but for Chuck, he comes out. So this is from Grant Taylor. He says, "Best friend and partner in mischief for over 30 years. Someone I don't see enough, like a couple other guys we used to spend a lot of time with. In good times and bad times, Chuck is a first call for me. He means that much to me. I wouldn't be half the drummer I am today if it wasn't for Chuck, Dave, and Darren. Outside of having different DNA, he is my brother. I love him and I miss him." So that's Grant Taylor. So hold that thought. And then from Darren Mistady Dumas, the singer of the Salads, he loves music as much as any other human being on the planet.
Oh my God, he's the biggest music lover I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So Darren says, "Looking back at my history with Chuck, I'm very proud of what we've accomplished together. Working, traveling the world, performing, living, and loving life together has taken us through many experiences that have molded us into who we are today. We have grown up together from young men to raising young men of our own. As the years continue to go by and our lives pull us in different directions, we somehow manage to stay in touch and maintain communication. As difficult as that is with our busy lives, I am thankful for it. Chuck is a dedicated, hardworking dude who shares his passion with all his heart and wants everyone around him to feel the same joy. He's one of the good ones, and I'm thankful life made our paths cross. Love ya, Chunky Nuts." So some terms of endearment.
Yeah. The nuts comes from Zeke. Zeke always calls me the nuts, and I actually have that on the headstock of my bass. It says the nuts. Those are really nice. I feel the same about those guys, and I think I expressed that earlier, that I wouldn't have got where I am without that, right? And it's without them. So, and Darren and I still talk every day. Grant and I still talk every single day. It's pretty awesome. Grant and I just send fail videos to each other and videos of people being hurt. But I think that is so much of us being like original Jackass guys, where we're I'm so glad that's not me, right? We watch it and that's something we would do, and I'm so glad it's not on video, and I'm so glad I didn't get that hurt, right? So we share that a lot. And Darren and I still talk about music every day. He went to see Fishbone at the Phoenix
Last night.
and texted me during the day and said, "Are you coming? I want you to come." Right. We needed to share that together, but I couldn't. I was way too busy, so I couldn't get there. But yeah.
I
Yeah,
talked to him this morning. I said, "Hey, how was the concert?" And he put, "Still the best live band in the world." That's what he
it
said.
is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. When you think back to the Salads, to all the albums, all the years, what are the thoughts, memories, emotions that come back to you now? Just in a bubble, what's coming to you when you think of the Salads?
Yeah, we had Lucky Day came out, which is a song we never released. We wrote and recorded that in 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes in the studio with Dan. We just had extra time one day and we did that. And then we ended up selling it to GM, General Motors at the time for 12 months. They bought it for a promotion. They were doing some TV ads. So we released that just a little while ago with the help of Pfeiffer and Darren digging and working with one of our old producers to remaster that. But when that came out, I didn't listen to it at first, which is interesting, I think. But when I finally did, I find myself in my driveway 2 hours later listening to it on repeat, full blast, and going, this is an energy that can't ever be reproduced again. And it's so amazing that we have this to be able to put out because it has that feeling, that energy that we had together as a band. So when I think of the band, I just think about how explosive we were, and how we cut heads.
My realization by doing the podcast, interviewing you, interviewing Darren, getting in touch with Dave and Grant and the other Darren, all during the interviews and the podcast, what I have a new appreciation for is how insanely talented each individual member is. See, I knew the Salads, I was a fan, but I didn't realize how much of a monster each member was individually in the band. Does that make sense?
I was the weakest link for sure. But I know I'm a really good producer, because everything I've produced afterwards sounds just like it. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that's my part. Right. Like I realized I write all these melodies and then Darren will add words to it and sort of his own sort of rhythmic interpretation of the melody I'm giving him. And often I'll play the melody on bass till he sings it, like make it undeniable, like sing this, but not say it. And he'll start singing it and then play something else. Right. And so but I definitely don't play as hard as Grant. Grant is a monster drummer. And then Dave Zimba, if you look him up online, it's scary how good he plays. It's really, really frightening how good he was, and still is.
Isn't he like in LA or in the US or somewhere?
He went to school in Hollywood and like the drummer in his band played with Chick Corea for a while. And then the other guy in his band started playing with Dweezil Zappa, and it's just proof on how. And his band was called Zimba, which is his last name, right? And all these guys went and joined all these other bands. But no, he lives up around the Collingwood area now. So he built a house and has a studio, and I think just plays guitar all day. The
life, living the dream. Do you remember the first time that the Salads got radio play? Do you remember the first time you actually heard your own song somewhere?
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
Was that like?
It was really, really special. It was Martin Streak. Martin, it's going to make me cry to just talk about it because Martin passed away a couple of years ago, or quite a while ago now. But Martin was really, really important to the Canadian music business. Was really, really special. He discovered bands like us. And he eventually lost his job there unceremoniously at the Edge. He had the Edge tattooed on his butt. And he eventually lost his job, I think, because of his drive to push bands like us and his drive to be like, no, we need to do it this way. And, people were playing numbers games and get Martin out of here, which was devastating for him. But he played our song the very first time late at night on one of his Friday night shows. And I remember, and it was a song that wasn't even our single yet. It wasn't Get Loose, which was our first single. He played a song called Who's That Cat?
That's a good one.
Yeah. And I remember hearing it and going, oh my gosh. But then on that same show, he played Head PE, the band Head Planet Earth. And their single at the time was a song called Bartender, which turns out just crushed our song Who's That Cat? And it was a very similar song. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have no chance. But Martin kept pushing it. And in addition to that moment where Martin was the first one to play us on the radio, he used to host a night at the Phoenix, a dance night, where he was the DJ up in the booth up top, looking down over the whole dance crowd there that would come there on Friday nights. And we were there with him one night because we were friends. And he pulled us up to the DJ booth and we were just hanging out. And he's like, okay, guys, you got to see this. Watch this. And he put on Get Loose. And we watched the Phoenix was packed and the entire place went off and was bouncing up and down. And him just looking around and watching us in shock. Like we all just laughed and cheers. So yeah, I remember that very clearly.
Man, who are some of the other bands that were in that music scene with you guys on your way up that ended up doing big things? Were there some other bands you might have toured with or, played with or whatever that ended up finding a big break?
Il Scarlet was one of those where we talked about that, where we took them on their first little tour in Ontario and they ended up signing a great record deal and made a big career out of it. And then they've come back and it's fun to see them do their reunion show at the Phoenix. That's one where Zeke booked that. And Zeke, it's one of those where he takes a chance because he's like, I don't know how popular these guys are anymore.
It sold out, didn't it?
Yep. When I talked to him, I said, I think it's going to sell out for you, man. And it did. And it was amazing to see. So that's a band that we grew along. There were a lot of us at the time. It was, that was the Clark Nova time too. And we did a lot of tours with them. There were a lot of bands that we played with where people would become stars outside of those bands, but it's really hard to remember. Like we were touring a lot with Not By Choice, who was doing the same stuff as us. They just happened to be really good friends with Sum 41. So they did a lot of that as well. So that's actually a really tough question, Joel. I'm trying to think of other bands.
That's all good.
There are a lot, but I'd have to go back and look. And it's an era where there were so many of us, right? Even because even Age of Electric was a big thing at the time, and Todd Kern's gone so far since then, right?
That's Remote Control. That's Age of Electric.
Oh yeah.
So good.
Yeah, I sang that in a sales meeting the other day because one of my other people in my office said it, but I knew there were 25 people in the office, and I knew when she said, "Oh, I forgot my remote control," I knew she was speaking to me. And I went, "Forgot my remote control," and she started laughing and clapping. Right?
I'm happy that in a room full of real estate agents, there is at least someone that knew the music that you were referring to. So.
Oh, there's a lot of rock and roll real estate agents. I work with the drummer from Monine. The drummer from Kitty is a realtor. It's a lot of drummers. The drummer from The Watchmen I talk with often, Sammy. He's a great real estate agent in Toronto. Who else? There's so many of us, and it's good. It's a good transition job for someone like us.
Yeah, we'll talk about the skills developed in the music industry that translate well to real estate. We'll talk about all that stuff in a second. So you guys had a bunch of music videos. You had some really cool music videos. Do any of those stand out to you? Any experiences of making the music videos? Anything memorable happen? What comes to mind when you think of music videos for the Salads?
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. I did most of those. It all came from, it started with the guy who designed our album covers, and he designed album covers for EMI and Blue Note and things like that. And he was a good friend of Dave's sisters from art school. And so then he had two friends who wanted to break into making videos, and were coming back to Toronto. And that was John and Willie Choi. they called their brothers, and they called their company Chinamen. And then I was introduced to our Dennis's friend Sherry Sinclair, who has owned a number of massive video companies in the country. And Sherry has been a huge help, and she helped me get funding and helped John and Willie get funding on our first videos. Sherry has been amazing, and she's helped us produce a lot of videos. And I remember so much fun stuff out of all of them. Who's That Cat? We had the option of hiring our own caterer, and we hired Donnie Blaze, who used to book the Gasworks in Toronto, and then he booked Rancho Relaxo. And so we kept that sort of in our life, which was really nice. And then he catered all of our videos after that as well. So I remember the catering.
Very important on a music shoot.
Yeah,
the musicians get fed.
Yeah, our video for the song Growing Up was, or actually, I'll tell you, I'll try to go in order here, actually. So then we did, after Who's That Cat, which we hired Donnie to do for, and those are the Chinamen. We did another video with Chinamen for Get Loose, and we did that at a green room space that's in the West End of Toronto. And while we were doing that, we came out and we heard Cyndi Lauper's band rehearsing in another room, and we opened the door and introduced ourselves to Cyndi Lauper, which was really, really cool. So that's a cool memory from that one. And then we shot Unhappy with Mark Richter Dailey, who went on to do all of the Alexis on Fire videos, all those amazing videos where it's like a juxtaposition to who they are, where they're in like playgrounds with little kids. And the funny thing is, when they saw our video, it made them bitter. Like, they were mad. They were like, they used our video director, right? They're trying to steal from us. And I think it actually hurt our career a little bit, because their manager's a huge deal. But the truth was that we shot with Mark first, and it was Sherry that introduced me to him. I had never heard of him prior to that. And doing that with Mark was really fun, because that was a video where it was the same sort of thing as Alexis, where he does these things that don't match the music, it was a love song about wanting a woman to understand her position in a relationship a little bit better, because she feels so unhappy. You don't need to feel that unhappy. And he made it so that we all had a big fist fight when the bridge hit, and our whole band had a big fist fight till we're all covered in blood. And a couple of guys got really hurt in that. Darren loves to talk about him being hurt the most. Grant loves to talk about him being hurt the most. But we all got hurt. Those guys definitely got hurt the most out of all of us. What else? What were the other fun ones? And then we did Lucky Day, was a really, really fun video. The one that we just released the single for. That was the first video where they decided not to put us in it. Chinamen never wanted to put us in videos. They always wanted to just make their own little movies, right? And so that one, they finally got their wish. We weren't singing in the videos, but they made us just extras, like playing cards in the background or just walking through the scene and stuff like that. But they were right all along. Because that is our best video we ever made. The video is absolutely amazing, and it has all of those people in it. Dennis, who I talked about, is one of the still boxers in the video. So he's there, and they put blood on him, and all the people that worked with us were in that video. There's, our manager gives the camera the finger at one point, and which is so perfect for who he was. And so I loved making that. And the interesting thing about that one, it was near the end of that band existing as a touring band. And Grant was so hurt by the whole music business and people stealing from him, and him being aware of it and knowing that people didn't care, and it just hurting him so much that he didn't want to do it anymore. And amazingly, so we had this massive budget for that video. He didn't care. He didn't show up. But he eventually did, because we tracked him down. Somebody tracked him down, and he showed up really late in the day, really, really drunk and mad. And if you watch the video for Lucky Day, you'll notice that all the shots of Grant, he's alone, even though we made it look like he was with us in the room. It was, it's because he came late. And then there's one shot near the end where we're all following a boxer. There's a big boxer in front of us, and we're all cheering him on, and we're all following. And it's funny, they used it for all the promo for the single, and it's Grant looking at the camera going like hard at the camera. But what they don't know is that's Grant's crazy guy drunk face and his like I hate all of you face. I know him so well that when I see that, I'm like, oh my God, right? Like this was such a hard time for us as a band. Yeah. So I have a lot of memories. Growing up was really fun because we did that with oh my gosh, Mo Berg from Pursuit of Happiness, who I was a massive fan of all growing up. And so it was really cool to have him in the video and turn him into an old man, which is now the old man that he is now. When you watch the video, it's just looks like he does now. My wife was in that video. She was pregnant with our second kid, and she was holding our other kid in his arms. And there's videos of me chasing him. And then when we shot Lucky Day, he was there as well, my kid. And I remember him being really scared because of the crowds all gathering around me and stuff like that. So yeah, there's lots of good memories. And then our video director, John Choi, named his kid Jasper because he thought that our son had a cool name. And yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of memories, man. It's
that was a lot of good insider information for
and
all,
I can
the,
tell
all
you
the salad
Sherry,
fans.
Yeah, and Sherry Sinclair, who is a force in the music business, she's won a ton of awards for all the work she did. When we were nominated for an MMVA, it's because she brought the video to the radio to Much Music. She did it all for us when we were needing to hire trackers and stuff. She would just, I'll do it.
Which video got the nomination?
Get Loose.
So that song is the Salad's most played song on Spotify, 660,000 plays. Why do you think people love that song so much? I know why I love it. I'm curious why you think everyone loves that song so much.
I'll give you the absolute honest truth. Well, I can tell you how we write songs, or I do anyways, is when we were kids, we went to a music conference, Canadian Music Week. I may have told you this in our last interview, but Canadian Music Week used to be like the NAMM show in LA. And the NAMM show is a trade show for music. And the people play music, but mostly it's gear. And the people that are endorsed by these companies show off the gear. And yeah, those festivals aren't that anymore. But back in the day, we met David Lee Roth's drummer at Canadian Music Week because he was there for Sabian cymbals, and he was signing autographs at the Sabian booth. And so we all walked up to him and we talked to him and we told him our band and we told him what we were doing to write songs. We had this song called Johnny Stubbs that we told him, yeah, we took the intro from Bon Jovi. And he's like, we shouldn't be stealing. And he's like, well, you know what? He goes, great musicians borrow. He goes, great songwriters don't write original things, they borrow ideas, right? And we took that and we went for it. So all of those songs, so Get Loose was our first attempt at writing something according to the way that Greg Bissonette from David Lee Roth's band told us to do it, borrow. And so we had always done everything that was like against the grain, right? Like, what can we do that nobody else is doing? And we're not going to do it that way. And Get Loose, we were like, okay, we'll do what Greg said. What's the most popular song on the radio in the whole world right now? And at the time it was Chumbawamba, right? I get knocked down, I get up again, I'm never going to knock me down. Listen to Get Loose. Think about Chumbawamba.
Damn. You'll never hear it the same again.
But I could tell you that about so many things. There's songs where it's like, I'm not going to tell you the titles, but you can find it for yourself. What was the biggest radio played song in the world at the time was The Middle by Jimmy Eat World. Our song didn't sound like The Middle, but I thought, well, let's borrow that melody. And I know, what's her name? Kelly Clarkson did the same thing eventually and got busted for it. But she actually kind of stole the whole song, right? We would steal or borrow, as Greg said, borrow pieces of songs we loved and put them into the songs that we wrote. And so that melody we totally borrowed. And even the second single, the second big tune on that record was the Roth Kung Fu. What that was originally supposed to be was chopsticks. We wanted to do chopsticks, and then we decided not to. So that melody was supposed to be ba 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 da do do da ba. And the amazing thing, who had a great big hit in the last couple of years doing that was Maroon 5, right? Wasn't it Maroon 5? They have that song ba 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 da do 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 da da da. Is it Maroon 5 or is it another band? But
Sounds
they
like Maroon 5, but I'm
yeah,
not
they
sure
did
exactly what
chopsticks. They
song.
just did the melody. They did exactly what we were gonna do because that's what that song is, right? Dun 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 dun. It's dun 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 bum bum ba ba do 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 da. And so we didn't do that. But what I did do is I went at the time, one of my favorite radio songs as well was Jimmy Eat World, where they are you listening? Whoa.
Is that the Sweetness?
Yeah, now sing it back. Whoa. And think about Roth Kung Fu lyrics, right? Hey, now listen to me sing my song. Hey, now won't you help me sing along? Hey, now. Right. And so it was giving somebody something that whoa, but turning it into hey now. And then just saying the exact same thing. Now sing it back. Oh, whoa. All right. Won't you help me sing along? It's borrowing those, right? And that's where our songwriting ideas come from.
This
When,
this
when
this
it's time to
reminds
have
me.
pop
Sorry,
songs,
this
that's
this
what we do.
reminds me of an interview I saw with John Mayer, where he said that what he would do is he would take like verses from another song and turn it
Yep.
into the chorus of his song, or take a
Yep.
chorus of another song and turn it into the verse. So it's not like taking the actual song itself, it's taking that
Borrowing
part,
the idea.
yeah, borrowing the idea. And because it's not the chorus is now the chorus or the verse is now the verse, it's like harder to identify because it's in like a different place of the song. That was his trick. And changing the key as well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I could go through every single one of our songs and tell you where it came from, whether it's some of them came from like TLC, like they're like super strange. Some of them may have come from Kelly Clarkson, or like what you mentioned earlier, or they might have come from that sort of stuff. So it's pretty interesting. The melody and Lucky Day that just came out, I was just trying to at the time, our focus was writing really triumphant sounding music, and we were like, what are the most triumphant songs of all time? And one of them is the Star Wars theme, right? Do da 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 do da da. It's so triumphant. So the very first two notes of Lucky Day, do day, but we don't do the da da do da da. It goes do day.
That'd be so easy to identify if you did do that.
You would think, but it is so similar, right? Today is your lucky day, and it's in a do da da do da da. It's this kind of the same thing, but it's realizing that it's that major fifth melody jump that feels so good. So let's borrow that, right? And then I posted it the other day on Facebook. I posted a song called Thick and Thin because after watching Dave Grohl do Hero the other night and how inspiring it was like, we borrowed that song. Here's our version of Hero, right? And I posted one of our songs called Thick and Thin, right? But the funny thing is the same as John Mayer, the melody in that song is not Hero. We couldn't come up with a good melody for that song. It was really hard. And I remember Grant running into the studio at the time because he was in a back room playing pool, listening to us all trying to come up with a good melody. And he ran into the room and he sang some 80s hit. He goes, I know what melody we should use. And it was, and I'm trying to remember which it was. It might've been a Skid Row song or something. We changed it enough that it's not exactly that, but that's where it came from. It came from a Skid Row song, right? And we're like, that's perfect, right? So I think that's pretty common. It's just whether you admit it or not. People don't like to hear it. It's sort of like we were all tuning vocals, and once everybody knew, they all said, I don't like tuned vocals. I was like, okay, then point out the ones that are tuned and the ones that aren't, right? So
yeah. So you just mentioned all these salad songs. If we fast forward into the future, so we're talking a little bit of science fiction, let's think about humans in 300 years from now, 500 years from now. Let's imagine that most of today's music has disappeared. It's faded from from public consciousness. But there's one Salad song that will still be around that people will listen to. If you could choose one song, doesn't have to be a single, doesn't have to be the most popular song, but if you could choose one song that would best represent the band, what song would you have those future half cyborg, half humans listening to?
Well, the best represent the band versus the one that means the most to me. There, when you were talking,
you can give two. You can give two.
Yeah, when you were talking, I had, oh, I know what the answer is, but then you said is the best represents the band. I think they all represent who we are, but I would think maybe the thing that most represents the band is maybe our possibly Get Loose, but maybe not. Maybe because you want to hear Dave play guitar like he plays guitar. And so there's a song called Money that I think is a really good representation of who we are, because we were trying to mash Slayer with ska music. We were like, how would Slayer sound if they were to play ska music? And I like, and that's who we are. That's what we would always try to do, is try to just come up with something somebody hasn't done before, but by borrowing from them, right? So maybe the Money, I don't know. But for me, the song I would hope would last forever is a song called Circles that I wrote for my grandmother. She had Alzheimer's. She was the patriarch in our family. She's brilliant, really, really smart for this older. She grew up in the US during the worst of times, right? Where the segregation and stuff. And she's the kind of person that would go sit at the back of the bus with everybody, right? And we learned so much from her. So when she got Alzheimer's, it was very, very devastating to our family. And that song, Circles, took me almost an entire year to write the lyrics for, because every time I would figure out what the line should be, I always knew it was the right line because it would make me cry so hard. And I wouldn't be satisfied with that song unless it did that every single time with every single word. And I think that the message in that song is the most important thing that we've put to music, in my mind, is it's a topic that doesn't get discussed enough. Alzheimer's is very devastating to families, and it's a very hard thing to deal with. It's a very hard thing to understand. And I think we did a good job of describing what it's like, which is you're walking in circles and you just want to go home.
Yeah.
So that's the song that I would love to last, and I think has a message worthy of that. Beyond that, I think Get Loose will be the one that lasts, though. So
okay, well, we're gonna make a 3-song EP with the Salads, with Get Loose, Money, and Circles, and we're gonna put it in a time capsule. We're gonna launch it out somewhere, and that's what's gonna survive in the future.
Yeah, it needs a guitar. So Circles has a really cool guitar solo in it. So there you go. That's got a bit of Dave in there that needs to be there. So yeah, that's
perfect.
A good mix.
So I have one final question about the Salads, and then we'll move on to the Standstills. Final question. This is tough. This is what the fans want to know. Is there any chance for a reunion show? Anything new that could possibly happen from the Salads? You guys are all on good terms. You love each other. Is there a chance? That's all we want to know. 1% chance, anything.
Yeah, there's a chance. It's just doing it. I haven't actually spoken to Dave for a really, really long time. He's when I started playing with the Mothers, he went a little bit silent on me. I'm not quite sure why. We were always partners in the business of running the Salads. So I don't know what happened there. So I need to reconnect with Dave for it to happen. And I would love to. I've tried. I've sent him some messages, but I haven't heard back. I did play with Dave a couple of years ago with Amy Gaba, because we helped Amy write and produce a whole bunch of music. I had to teach her new bass player how to play all the stuff I was playing. And I was like, why didn't you just get me to play on the record? But anyhow, and so I think it could happen. And I have been talking to a friend of mine, and I think Most likely where this might happen is in London, Ontario, where we recorded all of our records. FM 96 still plays the Salads. So it makes sense for us to go there. We still have a nice big fan base and a lot of love there. A lot easier to get to than going to Winnipeg or Victoria, where we still also have airplay. And I have a good friend of mine that I don't know if you saw the artwork that somebody did for the mothers on my last shows, where it's this big painted piece of all the guys in the band. It's really, really cool. But he has a big collection in his house. He's a wealthy guy. He sells insurance, I think. And he has house parties all the time. He's had the Slackers at his house, I think, 12 times now. And he has another party with them coming up. He's had the tea party at his house. He had Big Wreck at his house. The I Mother Earth played at his house. We just set up in his garage and he has house parties. And I told him if the Salads were to come back and play another show, that's how I'd want to do it. I don't want to have to do it where we're selling tickets to a club or hoping with Zeke that we might sell out the Phoenix if we're lucky enough, or I don't want that pressure. We've always seen ourselves as the Canada's greatest party band. So if we come back, we're going to play at Mike's house for a house party. And you'll be very lucky to get a ticket because it's mostly just his friends that come. What?
I'll start sending them gifts in the mail today.
Yeah,
so.
But for us as a band, it's the perfect thing for us internally, for us to be able to do that. And then if people showed demand that they are mad at us and they really want to see the band, and it's too bad Call the Office closed down because that would be really fun. It's small in there and we could jam it up still and do something like that. So if we were to play at this party and it was a success and people wanted it more, then I bet we would do it. But it has to be right. We were asked to open up for Sloan this last summer at the Clinton Fair. And not everybody was on board. And so we said no. And it was because the band means too much to us. And so we need to do it the right way. We didn't want to just show up at somebody else's show. And we need to do it this way. We want it to be a party and a celebration and something where we can just go off with each other and be crazy and not have to worry about, we're doing a 40-minute set and we're opening for these guys and we got to show respect. And no, let's just go let it all hang out and party. So that's how it'll happen. That's what I've decided.
Well, I hope it happens, and hopefully we just spoke it into existence. So
yeah, well, I know that Mike's a big fan of what you do too, so that's why I'm hoping that he watches this and is like, "Oh, we got to do this," right? So yeah, it's my ulterior motive in that saying that is hoping that he listens. So
let's make it happen. So the standstills. So we mentioned new album Shockwave is out November 4th. You're playing bass all over this album. You are the bass player on the album. 2 singles have been released. So there's a Pretty Little Broken Thing. There's Get Right. Both of them are awesome. I want to start with a quote. So we have a quote here from Johnny Fox from the Standstills. So,
beautiful. Love me some Johnny.
Johnny says, Chuck is someone that I got to know on tour, but I never really knew him until I got to hear how he was a creator. His contribution to our album was above and beyond, and I feel that is who he strives to be as a person. I will forever be grateful for his contribution to our new album, but more importantly, I got to know him as a friend. From Johnny of the Standstills.
Yeah, I love them so much. They're such a sweet pair. And their drive was something that I couldn't match for them. I couldn't line myself up with what they were doing. Musically, yes, absolutely. It was like one of the best musical experiences I've ever had in my life. And I'm so excited for that record to come out. That was when I got to work with Neil from 3 Days Grace and Jill Zimmerman, and who engineered that, and then Howard Benson mixed that, and it's mind-blowing. And
that's like the dream team, those three.
With the Standstills, be you, just go for it. And they had all these ideas for the record, but when I started playing, they would, I did a lot of work prior to going in the studio, so I was ready to just bang off the whole record in a day when I showed up to the studio. But I would send them ideas, and then Johnny would say, play more. but not much more than that. Just play more, just do more you, right? And so it was a beautiful opportunity to play and to create and to do some interesting things. Get Right is my favorite one on there, and that's already been released, because I took some heavy freedoms with that. And they never got a chance to hear it because they wrote that later on. I didn't have a chance to send them a pre-demo of what I thought I might play on it for them to approve and change and produce, and I just did it. I said, I'm going to play something that I think is great. And so there's like a big chorus that happens before the bridge, and I wish it happened over and over again in the song, but it only ever happens once. And they were playing one note. It was one big chord, da da wah, da 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 wah, and I turned it into a big long chord progression. And I'm playing all these nines, and it ended up sounding like Mute Math or Deftones or something like that. And was like, this is amazing. And I played it, and I was worried. And Neil came in and was like, oh my, that's the part. That's the part. And so, yeah, it's been really special. I'm really excited for that to come out. It's been really hard to not be touring with that band. Because like I said, my schedule in my life just started to not line up with what they were doing, as much as I wanted to do it. It was part of the reason that I left I Mother Earth, was to be able to tour on the schedule that Standstills are about to jump on, which is that like you have to go for it to get what they're after, which is playing 300 plus shows a year, likely.
And big, some of them are big arena shows with 3 days.
Some are
Grace, right?
big, yeah. We had all of the 3 days Grace stuff booked before I left the band, and that was so crazy for me because as a kid, it's like that's my dream. Like I said, I adore Neil Sanderson, and I adore their new record. It's some of the new 3 days Grace record is one of the best produced albums I've ever heard ever. I like it, the sound of it. I'd love to see it live every single day for a year, right? Like, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to give them what they needed. So I had to find a way to piece out of touring, which was very hard on them as well. But I know they were being careful, which is why I'm not a prominent figure in the video for Pretty Little Broken Thing, because it
But
was
you
still,
are in it.
it was still a maybe for me. And so they wanted to have a bass player in there because they were introducing bass as part of their band. Because boy, does it make a difference with those guys. It's amazing, the power trio that they are now. So I'm in the background, but I'm so happy I got to be part of that because it was so fun to be in a rock video at my age. And the day that I told them I couldn't do it anymore, I was having some health reasons. I got in a bad car accident. It seemed like the universe was telling me not to do it. But the same day I quit was the same day that they got Brendan into the band. Like I told them I couldn't do it. They called Brendan immediately. He said, yes, I'll do this.
And a connection there with Brendan is he was in My Darkest Days,
Yeah.
and the singer of My Darkest Days is now the singer of 3 Days Grace, right, Matt?
Yeah, it's amazing, right? And Brendan, it's funny. I felt like I was trying to fit in. Like musically, I fit in with those guys. Like the things I was able to add to their record, I really understood what they were writing. But live-wise, and they would say this too, I'm always trying to figure out how to match them because they were different than me, right? I'm like a skater dude, and they're more
Western cowboy, cowgirl.
they have that vibe a bit, right? They're way more rock
Queens
and
of the
roll than
Stone
I'll ever
Age,
be.
yeah.
Yeah, like Renee's a star, man. She's a rock star, and for me, it was intimidating. To like, how am I gonna fit in with this, right? And I figured it out, and by the last show, I think I really figured it out. Like the very last one, where I'm like, okay, I know how to do this now. And so I gave it 1,000%, knowing it was my last time. But yeah, what a force! And Brendan is a monster bass player. He's a way better bass player than I am. So it's really cool that they found him. He's a bass player one, like number one. Whereas I was a guitar player playing bass. And so they've got a real bass player in the band now. He was pulled from, he also plays in the Classic Rock Lives stuff, which tells you his playing ability is just like off the charts, right? But what I was getting at with the way that I looked is that when I saw Brendan with them, I'm like, oh my God, he's like them. He's like that image that is My Darkest Days and 3 Days Grace, and how cool all of those people look. I was like, oh my God, they found their rock star, right? They've got their rock, like it's a band of rock stars now. Look at this. This is amazing. So I think it's all working out in the way it's supposed to work out. Um, but at the same time, I don't know if I'm going to get an opportunity to play stadium shows with like that again, right? So to walk away is like, wow, what have I done, right? So,
You
but it was the right
gotta,
thing to do. Yeah,
yeah, you made the right decision at the right time with
I hope they feel that way too. Yeah,
where your life was.
yeah,
So I came out on that tour and I saw you guys in Kingston,
yes.
and you're talking about, those guys are rock stars. So I'm right up front and I start taking a video of Renee playing drums, and she's such a rock star that like I'm taking it from the side. So she's playing and somehow she knows I'm filming, and she just kind of turns and does like she does something.
Yeah,
She
right.
just knows. Like she gave me the perfect,
He's as cool as it
TikTok,
gets, man.
the perfect TikTok, like 15-second video. So yeah.
Oh, they're the real deal. They're kind of as cool as it gets. They're rock stars just waiting to explode, right? And Neil knows it. Everybody that's working with them knows it. It's gonna happen. It's gonna
Yeah.
happen.
You said to me that your bass playing on that album, you felt like that's the best bass playing you've done on a
I think
record. Is
so.
that because of the freedom? Like,
It's the freedom. It's the time that I spent learning with I Mother Earth. Um, it was working with Neil and Jill and Johnny and Renee. Um, if people are encouraging you play better, you're always going to play better when people are positive. And those guys were so incredibly positive. Even when they didn't like what I was playing, they're classy enough to precede it with a compliment before they tell me they don't like it. Right. So it's, they're just very, very easy to work with, rather than some people will be like, that sucks. Or tonight was terrible. Right. Like, they weren't, and that makes it harder to play. So yeah, I think their encouragement plus the years of really learning how to um play over rock songs like that with the mothers, right? Learning how Jag does it and sort of taking that, right, and going with it. So
I
it's a
love how you
culmination
I
of a
love how
lot
you
of
keep
things.
saying the Mothers. For a second, I'm thinking like, is there a band called the Mothers? Like my brain has to adjust for a
Yeah,
second
yeah.
that he's talking about I Mother Earth, not the
Oh,
Mothers.
my mother's brothers, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's funny. We have a question sent in here all the way from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So this was sent in
Woo!
over Instagram. We're
Yep.
talking about Renee being a great rock and roll drummer. Jared's question, Jared Tupper, who would be your top 3 drummers to play with? So I guess blank slate, any drummer of all time, top 3 that you would play with as a bass player.
Grant Taylor is number one there, always will be. There's no one that I can predict like Grant, even though he plays incredibly complex stuff. I know what's coming next. We grew up together. So it's very easy to play with him. Nothing else feels like that. It gives me the out of body experience that you're always racing after in music. Or at least that's what I was racing after all the time, is it's to get you into dream mode where you don't know how you're doing what you're doing, but you're just doing it. And it's unexplainable magic. And I always got there with Grant. Beyond that, Marco Minnerman would be a guy it would be very intimidating, but oh my gosh, he plays in a band called the Aristocrats. He also has become Alex Lifeson's favorite drummer to write music with.
Wow, from Rush.
I think if Rush were to come back, that's who they would likely have, and it would be undeniable. I don't think you could argue that it's worth your time to listen. Even though Neil seems unreplaceable, right? If there's a guy to replace him, I would think maybe Marco. So I would love to play with Marco, and it's the joy that he has when he plays too. Oh my gosh, it's that same thing that Eddie has. He looks so happy, and when he's playing really complex stuff, it looks like he's doing it as a joke to try to trick you all. All right, he starts smiling when he will play in like 23:16 or some ridiculous time signature. he'll throw it out. And if you ask him to help you, he'll throw ones at you. One. He's such an interesting guy. So I'd love to play with him.
Before you name the third person, so you told me to check out the album from the Aristocrats, You Know What? And to be honest, I wasn't familiar with the group, and I listened to that album. It's the craziest musicianship. Like, it's unbelievable. It reminds me, like, different style, but it reminds me of Liquid Tension Experiment in the sense that it's
similar genre. Yeah.
Just in the sense that they're both super groups with like the world's best musicians. So I was super impressed with that suggestion, and I've added it to my great albums playlist. So thank you.
That's cool. Yeah, those guys met at a music trade show. They were playing all at different booths, and they started playing together at different booths because they were all there for their endorsement, and they all just started playing. And they're like, "We got to make a record." Right.
So they call that serendipity. I think that's like a perfect example.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. And they all take turns writing music on those records and stuff. But yeah, that's definitely a super group because two of those guys, both of them play for in Joe Satriani's band as well, right? And Deathlock and Guthrie is just one of the best guitar educators on the planet. But the reason that's one of my favorite records, Joel, and maybe give it a try. But as things went on musically for me, and definitely during my I Mother Earth years, I started hearing music differently. I think it was having Danielle behind me, having all this super quick percussion happening behind me all the time, and getting used to hearing all this rapid fire and dissecting it as it's happening. And how do I fit into that? Is I hear music very differently. So when I listen to that record now, I hear every single little note and every little thing. And it's almost like it all slows down in your brain. Like if you ever get in a bad accident in a car or anything, everything slows down. And for some reason, complex music like that does that in my brain now. And so with that record in particular, I will always put that on as I'm driving to a difficult client, or if I have an exam to write, or I'm taking a course and it's really hard. And even though I'm studied up on the person or the deal or whatever complex thing I'm doing, I'll listen to that full blast on my way because it organizes my brain to be able to think clearly.
That's amazing. Who would your third drummer be before we wrap that up? I pulled you away from it because I want to talk about that album, but
I don't know. You know what? It's the guy. What's his name? Sterloid. Is his Instagram handle, and I don't know, but he's John Mayer's drummer. Okay. And he did some stuff with my friend Michelle Willis, who's now on tour with Snarky Puppy. And I think he does stuff with Snarky Puppy and stuff. But oh my God, what a drummer!
Is it something Jordan? There was like a Jordan that played with.
Yeah, I think so. Really Steve cool
Jordan?
guy.
I don't know.
No, it's not Steve Jordan.
I'm just throwing out names.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. I could find it if I looked it up. But
there was the John Mayer back when he did Continuum. It was a trio. It was John Mayer, Pino Palladino, and something Jordan. But anyways,
yeah, I think that was Steve Jordan. But I can't remember this guy's name. But what a monster! And his Instagram is Sterloid. And he's such an educator and just beautiful musician. And so I think he'd be a fun guy to play with. And when I saw that he played on my friend Michelle's record, I was like, oh my God, I'm connected to this guy. Right. Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
My joke is you're the Kevin Bacon of the Canadian music industry. What is it? 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon.
Oh, the Salads always said that in interviews. We'd ask radio DJs to just name any band and we'll tell you how we're connected. But I had a show and I have a theme song for it, the 6 Degrees of Chuck, on County FM in Prince Edward County on Saturday afternoons at 4. We would do the 6 Degrees of Chuck, and the guy would just throw out random rock stars. It didn't matter who it was. And then I had to tell him how I was connected. And then we would play a whole bunch of music from all the bands I talked about in that connection. Right. And it's pretty fun. We could try.
Yeah, no, I just, again, all the interviews I've done, it's like you come up in some way between the different bands and bass and guitar and radio and real estate and all, networking and all those different
things. To pay your mortgage, to be able to buy groceries in the Canadian music business, you have to do every single job. If you're just going to be a rock star, you're going to probably still be hungry. So I did everything, right? I ran a record label. I did that. I was a stage tech and a guitar tech for a lot of bands. I was backline guy for the Junos and the MMVAs. I ran a backline company for the Bare Naked Ladies. And when you do that, you absolutely meet every single person out there.
Yeah. So someone you've met in the live event space is Bruce Nickel, who has a few kind words. So
I see Bruce all the time. Bruce is one of my favorite.
Bruce is the best.
And he's the very first person I saw on stage when I came back after tour. And to see Bruce standing there working just made my heart go good. Like, Bruce is at work. Oh, yes. Right. Like, so yeah.
That's too funny, because I have a quote from him, and it's actually exactly what you said. So anyways, Bruce Nichols, he was the bass player for Idle Sons, who I was a big fan of. Like, I paid to see them twice in concert back when they were touring. I own that album, the major label debut album. So I was a fan before he's gone on to become a big deal in the live space as a guitar tech, stage tech, tour
manager. My very last show with the Standstills at the venue in Peterborough was with oh my gosh, how come I can't remember their name? I'm the worst. It's the other 3 Days Grace band, the singer Adam's new band.
Oh yeah, Saint Asonia.
And what an amazing band. And Bruce was teching for them at that show, and he said some really nice things to me that night about my playing. And I didn't tell him it was my last show, right? But I knew that he was sitting side stage watching me. Like, he had front row seat to my very last show doing that kind of thing. So I don't know if he's aware of that, but
I don't know, but we'll make sure he sees this
to my start and my end. Yeah.
Oh wow. So to our listeners, so I mentioned he was the bass player for Idle Sons. He's in the live space. He's worked with Finger 11, Justin Ozuka, Big Rack, Matthew Good. So the some of the greatest talents in Canada here. So here's
one of the greatest talents doing that job, dude. He's one of the best techs in the whole country, if not the world, right? Yeah.
That's what I heard from all the quotes I got for him from other experts. So Bruce says this: he's more than just an excellent player. He's an excellent human. Seeing Chuck on a gig is always an indication of a great day. He's extremely optimistic and always a great hang. And then he gave you a review, 10 out of 10. There you go. It's like you're a video game.
10 out of 10.
Masterpiece.
Yeah. We all feel the same way about it, but that's a big part of existing in this, is when you last that long, you see the same people all the time. And it's not just because you're running, it's because you all became friends over time and you all work together in so many different ways. Because like him, like myself, you got to do all the jobs, right? If you really want to do it, you got to go do all the jobs, right? And then one of them is going to click enough to become a career, right? So
yeah, I have just 3 questions about I Mother Earth, and then we can talk a little bit of real estate, which I know you're excited. I'm excited. I have questions about real estate itself, about the market, about interest rates, about different things that are happening, and you're my expert now. So with I Mother Earth, I just wanted to touch on those shows, the Ottawa and the Toronto shows that were a long time coming, and the pandemic, and they get rescheduled and all this stuff. What was it like after, a year and a half pandemic lockdown to actually get on stage, and the shows were sold out? They were awesome. People were into it. What was that feeling once you were on stage?
It felt good because we were so well rehearsed and the music sounded awesome.
And I was there in Ottawa. Let's just say that.
So. Yeah, I knew they were my last 2 shows with the band as well. I don't know who else knew other than Christian in the band. I don't even know if Jag knew at the time. I don't know, because nobody was talking to me about it. So those were really important to me for all of those reasons. And I wanted to make core memories at those shows. So yeah, it felt really good to get back and do that, and to really focus on just playing the best I could possibly play, which didn't end up happening because I fell over and hurt myself and it was very hard to play. But I'll never forget the crowds. I'll never forget the very last song at the Phoenix Levitate. We played Levitate, and I remember just taking it all in, like thinking, I don't want to take any of this for granted. I need to remember every moment of this, and looking out at the crowd and looking directly in people's eyes and smiling back at them. And I, in the very last note, dun, 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 and I remember that right before that last note, it's that same thing, like an accident where everything goes and slows right down. And I went, here's the very last note I'm ever going to play with this band. And I went, bah, and just looked out at everybody and said, thank you. And so it was really great.
You don't want to miss that last note when you know it's your final note. That'd be
Because I missed
tragic
so
if you got
many
caught
others.
up and it's like you just
I
didn't
feel
play
like I
that last
ruined
note.
their live recordings. They made a lot of live recordings. I fell, I broke ribs, I broke my ankle in like the third or fourth song in Ottawa, the first of those, and it became hard to stand. It became hard to hold my bass, and then it started to become really hard to play because my whole side was wrecked, and it's still wrecked. I broke stuff up here and on the side and in here. I couldn't pick up basses to switch, and I was just forcing myself to do it. And so my playing really went out the window. So I wish that hadn't happened, because at our rehearsals leading up, we rehearsed a lot because it's so important to that band to kick ass and to sound great. And Jag hears music in his head a certain way, and if it's not that way, he's unhappy. And so we worked till he felt happy enough to record it. And then I remember being at rehearsals thinking, I've never played this well in my whole life. Like, I'm ready to kill this, right? I can do stuff I couldn't do before. So that was the best part for me, was knowing that we were ready. But then it turned into the best part for me was just remembering the crowds that were there.
So I was there at the Bronson Center in Ottawa. I was there with a bunch of friends. We were right up front. And I remember within the first few songs, I turn around and I'm talking to some of my friends, and I turn back and suddenly I don't see Chuck anymore. And then my friend Eric's like, Chuck's on the ground. So he witnessed the falling.
Yeah, part of the universe telling me to stop.
Yeah, so your Chuck's all the way down on the ground, then Chuck's back up like nothing happened, plays the whole show. To us, everything sounded and looked great, and we thought, like, Chuck's pretty wild, like he probably got down on his knees and then all the way down and then whatever. And with my friend Eric's like, oh, I think he might have fallen, but everything looks fine now. And at the end, when the show's done, I said, hey, like, I know you're busy, just if you have a second to say hi. And you're like, I'm probably going to be at the hospital. I'm like, what happened? You're like, I think I broke my ribs and my ankle or my foot. And then you posted pictures, and it's like your foot was like blue and yellow. What, like, your leg gave out while you were playing? What happened?
I
Any
slipped
idea?
on a cable or something. I went to jump up and do a flying scissor kick rock move, and
A David Lee Roth splits in the air kick.
Do the Roth Kung Fu. And as I went to jump up, there's just this perfect spot. And another Sunday where I love to do it. For all aspiring stage jumpers, jump on 4, you'll always land on 1. And that's a perfect one, because we do this big 1 hit. And so I jump on 4 when it's quiet, land on 1. It takes time to learn that stuff. And you don't just do it. You got to figure out how. But I went to do it, and I stepped on a cable when I went to lift off, and I remember looking back, and my foot was completely backwards, but I was still standing, like it was twisted the other way around.
Oh.
And I went, oh my God. And then I guess the tendons or whatever throw your body at the ground because you can't. So I'm still playing, and I never missed a note. Right. So
yeah, I didn't hear anything.
I
I only physically missed seeing you fall down. So
I was on the ground, and I remember Christian looking at me and going, what happened? He's playing. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm old or something. And I stood up, and I didn't think I was going to be able to stand up when I was down there. When I watched the video, I'm amazed at how fast it happened, because it was another one of those things where it was like everything stopped. I'm on the ground, and it felt like I was on the ground forever playing, trying to figure out how I was going to stand back up. And I remember thinking, oh my God, we sold out both of these shows. They can't do it without me. I have to finish. I need to get up. And so I stood up and played through. But when I got off stage, I made the mistake that they tell hockey players not to do when they break their ankles, is leave your skate on, right? Because it keeps the foot in place. The second I took my shoe off, my foot went whoop and turned purple. And then I couldn't use it anymore. And I slept in my front hallway that night because I couldn't get up my stairs. And so and I didn't sleep because it hurt so much. And so the next show in Toronto, I played without any sleep with a very broken body, and got through it. So,
And as bad as your foot looked, you were saying that your ribs actually hurt as much or more. Is that
oh yeah,
right?
it was bad. And so then I did the Standstills tour right after that too. And then during the Standstills tour, I got in a really bad car accident too. So there was all these things that were like, get off the road, stop doing this. So
It's
yeah,
crazy because it's not like your injuries are the equivalent of like if you fell off the stage, you know? So it's
yeah.
just crazy how it's this, you couldn't recreate that, I don't think.
I smashed myself. And then right before that happened, I threw myself off my ATV and broke ribs on the other side. So I had ribs busted on both sides too, doing the Standstills tours. So it was like,
Jeez.
yeah.
So all of that leads to the decision to step away from My Mother Earth. You were saying that actually in advance of those shows you knew.
Oh,
Is
I had
it
talked to them well ahead of that. I had talked to them after doing the very first shows we did back. I knew that I didn't want to do it anymore. I knew I didn't want to do it anymore. So I talked to Chris and I told him, and he's a real vibe kind of guy. He writes all the lyrics in I Mother Earth. He's a poet. He's got a real sensitive, like he's got that power of empathy where he can feel things, I guess. And we're talking and he says, I can feel what's happening here and it's okay. Right? It's okay. I can tell that it's time for you to be done. Like you want to stop and maybe we'll do stuff together in the future, maybe not. I don't know. But it's like we're not going to stop you from being you. And so I
That's
understand.
nice.
Right. And at the time I was um asking if they had someone else to do those final shows so that they could just move on and introduce someone. But they asked me to do those last two. And then when those were over, I had planned on those being my last, but they had another two shows booked. So I reached out to the guys and said, if you need me, I'm here. I don't want to leave you hanging because I know it's a really hard gig to fill. Um, but they got Joe Barlow, who is a guitar tech of ours, unbelievably great musician. Joe and I talked on the phone while he was rehearsing with them, and he asked for a couple tips on how to make it sound a certain way, which is making it slippery and slidey. I Mother Earth is about the bass sliding and slipping, so you don't play an octave in one position, do bump. You slide all the way up 12 frets, boom, whoom. And that's the difference. And that was the only direction he asked for. And the rest of it he's done on his own. And what a phenomenal player. I don't think he's permanent because he's got a little kid and a house to pay mortgage on. So I don't think he's going on tour. I might be wrong. But I'm pretty sure that they need to still find someone. So
Yeah, this has been a transition period. During the pandemic, you started doing real estate. That's your main focus now, family real estate, living
yep.
a quiet life. And when you first decided you were going to move forward without I Mother Earth, the Standstills, David Bowie, cover band, all that stuff, it seemed like it was pretty tough because it's new and it's all you've known for your entire life.
Oh yeah, I'm
But
still
it
trying to
seems like
figure it out.
now
Yeah.
there's this sense of peace that this is your life and it's amazing. And would you say that's pretty accurate?
Yeah, it's realizing that it's just finding yourself, right? The pandemic gave guys like me a chance to find myself. I think I was an autopilot like that. I have to do this. I refuse to do anything else for so long. And I got there that it gave me pause. And it was also this interesting thing where I was one of those people that had to collect CERB, or I wouldn't have been able to afford my mortgage or my groceries. And then also being so heavily involved in the music business and knowing people that were lifers, people in their 60s that depended entirely on live music and shows, techs and people like that. And then watching the country complain about people collecting CERB, calling us lazy, and then hearing our leader telling us to go retrain. All of a sudden it became, I don't matter. What I do doesn't matter to anybody. And I have no control over that. And then everybody wanted it for free, which we all did. You put it online and do it for free. And then there were some grants in place. So I was able to get some grants from some different funds out there to help people like myself that couldn't tour any longer, that put everything, 1,000% of yourself into touring. So yeah, I figured out that I didn't have control over it anymore, and I wanted control. Real estate, I have a control over my career and what I do, and everybody always needs houses. Everybody always needs a place to live. And so I can do that and have control and continue making music. I'm still working with Neil Sanderson and doing bass for Neil and some stuff that he's working on with Howard. So I'm still getting to play, but yeah.
If our listeners are considering buying a house and they're looking for a real estate agent, what qualities should they look for in a real estate agent? What makes a good one versus a bad one?
In my experience so far, it's people that'll listen to you, someone that's going to listen, someone that cares. It's almost, there's two types of people that you can find that are great. I think where someone that's really, really way too busy it tells you that they're good at this. And then also the people that are new to it are a great person to hire because they so badly want to work it. But I would say if it sounds like someone is bullshitting you, sounds like someone's giving you some BS, walk away. There's so many realtors. Like anything, talk to a couple people. Don't feel obligated to hire your friends. Find someone that you can connect with that understands you, right? It's so important that somebody understands what you're looking for and what your goals are, because I find so often realtors focus on the things they like and the things they want. And I think it's very easy as a realtor to lean people towards things too, just to get deals done, because people are so emotional. Don't find someone that's not going to do that. Find someone that's just going to listen to you, give you all the facts, and let you make your own decisions. Not someone that's going to make the decision for you. Just someone that's really going to work. And I work really hard. When you reach out to a realtor, talk to the people that get back to you right away, because that's really, really important. In real estate, communication is key. Everything happens really, really, really fast. So if someone takes a while to get back to you, they're not going to do a good job securing you a home, selling your home. They're just not going to. Because it's not their personality to be quick. You have to be quick.
I have just a few closing words here. So I wanted to take a moment as we wrap up to acknowledge you. Your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a musician, as a bass player, now the pursuit of mastery as a real estate agent, giving the best service and value to your clients. I want to acknowledge you for, we had talked about earlier, you're being an example of visualization, of speaking things into existence. It shows that works. You have not because you ask not. You need to see it first. I want to acknowledge.
Ask and you will receive. You're right. That's
exactly.
Such a great life. Yeah.
I want to acknowledge you for all the great music that you've been a part of. So with the salads, with the standstills, all the live stuff, bringing joy to people like me that went out to see I Mother Earth live.
Yes, I love, you know what, I'm going to cut you off quickly there.
How dare you, sir? Go ahead.
Bring joy to, I always apologize first, but bring joy to you. That's funny. The salads years ago, we were trying to figure out what was the purpose of what we were doing. What's the point of this? And then we started to realize, oh, we're an escape. We're an escape to joy. So thanks for saying that.
Yes. So making great music, being the soundtrack to a lot of people's lives, mine included, going all the way back to when I was 14 or 16. I want to commend you for your transition into real estate. That's scary. Not a lot of people are willing to do something new, and you dove in head first. You've become an expert in a very short period of time. You found success in that industry, and it's nice to know that there's one of the good guys is in there in that industry, and someone that cares more about helping a family to find the perfect home versus just the benefit for them. So I know that that's important to you. I want to thank you personally for opening the floodgates up for this podcast. Before you, it was just friends coming on with you, with your background, with your experience, with the name value, with all that stuff. It opened the gates to everybody since then. So I did say, I don't know, a year and a half before you. And then in the 9 months since you, I've all the platinum, multi-platinum, gold bands, all the big names have come in the last 9 months, exactly since you came on. So thank you for coming on before I knew what the hell I was doing. It's
really amazing, because you know what, Joel, one of the easiest things to do, I think, in life is to give people credit when they've done something, right? And in the music business, it is rare. People don't like to do it. They like to take credit for everything. If somebody loves what they're doing, they won't give that guy over there credit, even though he was on stage. It's just us. It's just us couple guys. That guy has nothing to do with it. And so it's really refreshing to hear you just point out what happened, because it happens a lot in my life. It happens a lot. And nobody ever really says it, right? So it's really cool to hear that. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So again, thanks for opening up the floodgates. And last but not least, thank you for today's interview, as well as the interview 9 months ago. I appreciate it. You're only the second guest who's come on for a second time, so it's rare air. We'll get you on for a third time at some point, so you'll be the first to do that. So Chuck, I really
number 6, I'm number 2.
There you go. I really appreciate your time, Chuck. I appreciate everything you do, everything you've done. And, hopefully we get some hangouts in maybe in Prince Edward County.
I would love that, Joel, or I'll just come see you in Ottawa.
Either way works for me. So thank you so much to our listeners. Thanks for tuning in, to the Chuck fans, to the Salads fans, to the I Mother Earth fans, to the Standstills fans. You've been in every band. I got to name every band in Canada. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you. Thanks, Joel.
If you've enjoyed today's episode of the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. What I want to know is, who would you like me to sit down with next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know by reaching out to me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel. And you can find me on Twitter and Snapchat at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.